So is it recording? All right, so today, at around 11 o'clock, there was a congregation of Sikhs who came down to commemorate what's called 1984. Now, when you hear the word 1984, you assume it's about the Orwellian book about 1984 and a totalitarian kind of state, George Orwell. And so there is a slight link to it, but it's not the same thing. There was a time in India in 1984 where the Sikhs were put under kind of an Orwellian totalitarian system where they were persecuted, and it resulted in 20,000 deaths. Yeah? And I'm talking about people being taken out their homes and lynched, raped, burned alive and everything. And this was done with the consent of the Indian government. And so what I'm going to try and do is, because what I realized is I just came back from the 1984 event, and I've realized that a lot of people at the park still don't really understand the whole, let's just say the whole timeline of what happened. And so I'm going to try and break it down into a more kind of digestible timeline. Now, before I go on, I know I've not been there for 3 months, and let me just say something. If I've said something wrong to my Sikh brothers, don't bitch and whine. Write in the comments, Raj, this was wrong, and I can rectify it later, because I'm only a human being and I'm one of the only people in the park that's going to be talking about. I've got no one to discourse with for them to correct me. So what I'm going to start with is why in 1984 20,000 Sikhs were massacred by mobs of people who were being coordinated by the government, by the police, and by, the Congress party. I'm normally very critical of the BJP, down to the BJP and Modi, because they're also a fascist organization. But the Congress party, which is seen as the, let's just say, a more kind of civil party that you don't really kind of identify the Congress party with atrocities compared to the BJP. But the Congress party has been totally complicit in the persecution of Sikhs in 1984. Now, just for me to give an overground, I'm going to say that I'm not going to give my too much of an overview of my own personal opinions, because then it's going to get complicated in terms of what my beliefs are. I will say beforehand, I want a separate state for the Sikhs in India called KHALISTAN, but through a referendum and not through military means. And so what's happened is that in 1980s, there was a separatist movement within the Punjab. So you have India, and India is a huge place, and the Punjab is in the north on the border with Pakistan. Half of Punjab is in Pakistan, and half of Punjab is in India. The majority of people in the Punjab are actually Sikh. There is a huge Hindu population as well. But what happened in the 1980s was that there was a lot of kind of broken promises to the Sikhs after independence. And so there's a lot of frustration with the Sikhs. And there was a resolution passed, and I can't go too deep into the resolution because it's too complicated in this. So I'm going to try and keep it concise. It was called a Nandpur resolution, where there was a certain kind of, let's say, criteria that the Sikhs wanted the Indian government to implement, relating to more autonomy for the Punjab and the water situation and stuff like that. What then happened was that an individual called Bhindranwala, Sanjay Bhindranwala, you'll see his pictures everywhere, big him up. To some people, he's a terrorist. To me, he's a freedom fighter. This is where things get complicated, because one man's terrorist could be another man's freedom fighter. But I personally believe when you look at his life, he truly is a freedom fighter, and there's a lot of false narrative against him, even from within the Sikh community. My own family is divided upon this situation with 1984 about a separate state for Khalistan. Some people think Bhindranwala was a bad guy. I believe he was a good guy. So I'm not going to go too deep into whether he was or not, because that's going to be too contentious. What I will say is that he wanted to implement the Nandpur resolution, which was just a few criteria that they wanted the Indian government to implement, which I thought was very reasonable. If they didn't implement this, he then called for the separate state of Khalistan. So if they didn't implement what I call quite reasonable demands, they wanted to have a separate state for the Sikhs called Khalistan. Now, what happened is that from 1982 until 1984, things started to escalate quite rapidly. And Bhindranwala, Sanjana Bhindranwala, went to what we call our most holiest place. So for Muslims, you call it Mecca. For Catholics, they have the Vatican. For the Sikhs, we have the Golden Temple. You might have seen pictures of the Golden Temple. It's called the Harmandir Sahib though. But for tourist regions, they call it the Golden Temple. So I'm not going to go into the rights or wrongs of why this individual called Bhindranwala went into the Golden Temple and took sanctuary there from the oppressive Indian government who were killing what they considered to be instigators for a separate Khalistan. So they went into the Golden Temple and they stayed there. And what happened then was Indira Gandhi, I'm sorry, Indira Gandhi is a bitch. Sorry, I don't, she is, sorry, I'm sorry. I've said it now. It's free speech. I don't care. Can I just say something? I'm allowed to call someone a bitch. Am I not?
Yes. It's illegal.
God, I didn't call her, I didn't say I wanted her to die. I said she's a bitch. Because what she did was she had lots of means to try and tackle this situation. But she did something that was so beyond what even the Sikhs could think was possible, which is that she stormed the Golden Temple. And in 1984, on the 3rd of June, which is today, they stormed the Golden Temple. Now, people might say that, oh, they stormed the Golden Temple because they had separatists in there who were holed up. But what I'm going to say to this is that there was lots of ways to get them out. But the way they chose was to go for a day where there was a lot of pilgrimages there. It was a religious day, it was during the day, and there was women and children in the place. And the Harmandir Sahib Golden Temple feeds up to, I think, 100,000 people a day for free. That's how busy the area is. And so what happened was they were holed up within Harmandir Sahib and the Golden Temple, and the Indian government decided to launch an attack. Now, the attack was called Operation Blue Star. One of the sad things is that the British government under Thatcher, Boo Thatcher, was in knowledge of this particular plan, and they even strategized the plan themselves and gave that as a kind of like an alternative plan to India, which is sad because the Sikhs of the Punjab and the Sikhs of India have generally been quite good allies with the British. So it was quite a big slap in the mouth. So basically what happened, there was an attack on the Golden Temple, and I want people to understand how much we see the Golden Temple in terms of our holy site. The Muslims see Mecca. Imagine going into Mecca with a tank and blowing the Kaaba up. This is what they did with the Golden Temple. They blew it up. Within the complex, there was women and children. Now, the Bhindranwala and all these guys all died, yes, within the attack. But a lot of Sikh soldiers who were asked to do the attack actually mutinied, but they brought people from outside who done the attack. But there was women and children within there, and I think it was over 300 people of pilgrimage died within the complex. Now, I remember this time because I was around 9 years old. Do the maths if you want to kind of figure out my age. So I was around 9 years old. I just went to India 2 years prior to that. And I had no desire for a separate state. I had no desire for independence. But after this event, it hardened me to the point that I thought, if the Indian government can go into a holy shrine, hold on, I need to finish. You can ask questions afterwards. So if the Indian government can go into a holiest shrine and attack it, then for me, I couldn't be part of that particular system of government. So since then, I haven't classified myself as Indian, but Punjabi. Although I love India as a, let's just say, as a historical place, but not as India today from 1947. So basically, after this happened, there was a lot of outcry, and including people from my own family who are not pro-Khalistan, so pro-separatism. Half of my family are totally against it. And so there's a lot of contention within the Sikh community about having separate state for Khalistan. But one thing that united everybody, and I need people to kind of really put this into context, whether you agree with Khalistan, a separate state or not, the actions of the Indian government against the Sikhs by coming into the most holiest shrine when there was pilgrimages there, pilgrims, and attacking it and blowing it up and killing so many people was going to alienate Sikhs. including people that were not pro-Khalistani. So for me, I remember it vividly, my mum recording everything. I started watching the news all the time. And I remember the tensions between the Hindu and Sikh community, which has always been rock solid, was a bit tense then. This is not a Hindu-Sikh thing. I need to clarify that. This is a government Sikh thing, yeah? Because some of the closest people of my family were Hindus. And I remember during the time, there was a bit of tension between my family and the Hindu family that used to come round. But they resolved it. So there was this tension for a little while, but it's not, I just need to clarify, it's not a Hindu versus Sikh thing, it's a Indian government versus Sikh thing. So basically, after this, there was a lot of furore. So this happened in June, and ended on the 8th of June. Now, what happened on the 31st of October, before I say what I'm gonna say, I do not agree with violence. I do not agree with assassinating people. I do not agree with taking the law into your own hands. But Gandhi was a bitch. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that, and I can say that. What happened was that after months of nothing being resolved, or no apologies, but the government doubling down, Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister at the time, had 2 Sikh bodyguards. Yeah, one was called Santwan Singh, I think. Let me just double check their names before I say it. I don't want to disrespect them. And Ben Singh, I think.
Can you tell us the 5 demands? Sorry.
Maybe not today because I'm probably not the best person, but I'll try. So Ben Singh and Santwan Singh, yeah, they were Indira Gandhi's bodyguards. And whether I agree with them or not, I don't agree with violence. They felt like there was no way to get justice through the court system because the government was so corrupt. So they did assassinate Indira Gandhi. Both of these 2 individuals were then, let's just say, pretty much executed on the spot. I think one died doing it. I need to preface one thing. The Sikhs didn't go around killing 50 people to get to one person. There was one individual, they didn't shoot any people around her, they just got her, and I think it was one other person was injured. Now what happened, I don't want to go into the details about whether you agree with that or not. What happened next is one of the biggest disgraces in Indian history. And the individuals that assassinated Indira Gandhi were executed. Yeah? I don't agree with that. They should have been tried if you wanted to do that. But what happened then was the Congress party, which was in charge of India at the time, started to instigate violence towards Sikhs. Now the way they did this was they used all the might of the Indian government and the police, especially in places like Delhi, because Punjab is heavily Sikh, and Delhi is much more mixed of Muslim, Hindus and Sikhs. They then instigated the violence and started using rhetoric like Kunda Kunya, which was, I think was Amitabh Bachchan, which was a big Indian Bollywood actor, saying blood for blood. And the Indian Congress Party started to fan the flames. What happened was the Indian government then gave the electoral register over to the rioters. And they funded them with money, with petrol, with sticks, with crowbars. And what they did with the electoral register, they ended up going around all the houses and marking them as Sikh. So the government was totally complicit in the persecution of Sikhs. So it would have been very difficult to distinguish Sikhs. During this time frame, which lasted around 3 or 4 days, the Indian government did nothing to stop it. In fact, they colluded with it. And on top of that, the police were, in so many cases, used to just stand by and watch as young boys were dragged out of their house and tires were put around them and they were set alight. Women were dragged out of the house and raped. Elderly people were murdered. And this kind of riot, which I call a genocide, this riot lasted for days with the complicit agreement of the Indian government. Now, this is not up for contention. This is not hearsay. This is a fact. The Indian government, the Congress party, Rajiv Gandhi, who was Indira Gandhi's son, which I understand he was upset, all of them orchestrated attack on the innocent Sikhs of Delhi and other areas, and started to do like a pogrom of getting them out and killing them en masse. By the time the rioting stopped and people started to be brought back in, there was a media blackout, so no one could report anything. It was totally lawless. By the time it finished, 20,000 Sikhs had been murdered at the hand of the rioters. And from there, since today, there has been no real justice for the victims of these attacks. Now, there have been a handful of people that have been arrested and a handful of people that are on low level. I think one person was executed. But when you're talking about individuals that are now in the Indian government in areas where they're like, treasurers and stuff like that, who are known accomplices, who were giving out bottles of petroleum, who were giving out money, rewards that if you kill Sikhs, you're going to get this amount of money, and all of this kind of stuff. And even Amitabh Bachchan, who I used to love as a little kid, he was an Indian, like a Tom Cruise or Indian filming, he also instigated this kind of bloodshed towards the Sikhs. This is why the Sikhs today are so agreed with the Indian government. Even Sikhs who do not believe in a separate state for the Punjab, because I believe in a separate state, but there's a lot of Sikhs that don't. A lot of Sikhs that don't. It's 50-50. But we all agree on one thing, that the treatment and the subsequent injustice of how the Sikhs were treated is a crime against humanity. And India, I put you in a third world already before, for the other situation, which I won't go into, and now you're really in the third world again. One thing I will say, there are some lights in the kind of the end of the tunnel. An individual called Sajjan Kumar, yeah. So I will give the Indian government a little bit of credit. An individual called Sajjan Kumar, who was one of the individuals that was giving out money, was giving out weapons, and literally put bounties on Sikhs' heads. In 2008, in December, was finally convicted and put in life for prison. That is one person, and he was a high official within the government. So I will say that, hopefully, I didn't want to make this too convoluted, because when you start talking about this situation, it starts becoming derailed in terms of what the message today is. This individual, so what's your name?
I'm Barry.
Barry. So Barry, it says, asked me about the non-pool resolution. Now, I got a brief understanding of it, but I don't know it in depth. So basically, the Punjab is in a kind of a crucial area of India. It's on a border with Pakistan. It also is the bread basket of India. It's got high water retention within there, so there's a lot of kind of water within that area that other states want to take out. And there's a particular clause within the Indian constitution which classifies Sikhs as Hindus. Now, we have no problem with our Hindu brothers, but we are not Hindus. So when you're under the constitution and you're categorized as a subcategory of Hinduism, it's a bit like a Christian being subcategory of a Jew. You're related, because we are related to the Hindu faith, but we're a separate religion. So there's a couple of situations like that they wanted more autonomy for the Punjab so it can control its own taxes and control its own water and everything like that. So there's a relatively, let's say reasonable list of demands that they were asking for. If those demands were not met, then they did ask for a separate state. And by the time it got to the point of the massacre, those resolutions were never going to be met anyway, because the Indian government was kind of sticking its feet in the ground and didn't want to capitulate to these demands. What did you want to say? I'm good.
Yeah, we sympathize, everybody sympathize what happened with the Sikhs in the 1980s. But don't you think you are a bit unrealistic, going for independence now, a bit too late on the day, and referendum, and it can never happen because, all India depends on the area for food. Yeah. And they depend.
Are you Indian yourself?
No, I'm not Indian.
Pakistan?
Whatever you can say.
No, just tell us, man. Come on.
Yeah, near enough.
All right.
So they depend also, the people, Sikhs, they depend for financially on India for selling their product. So it's impossible.
All right,
now.
so let me clarify something.
It's impossible now to.
Yeah, so let me say something. I'm a realist. When I was younger, I was like, KHALISTAN at no cost.
Yes.
At any cost. I don't believe that anymore.
Yes.
I believe that India will never give Punjab up because of the importance strategically, economically. They would not give it up.
Especially for food, agriculture.
So you got agriculture and the
All
water
India
as well.
depends on
So
it.
what I really want, if I'm being honest with you, is justice for the Sikhs. And I would love a separate state, but I don't think it's ever going to happen. But I would want a referendum.
It's unrealistic.
But I would want a referendum. I think the Sikhs should at least have a referendum.
Referendum where?
What in
Your
Punjab?
part.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you'll get majority. What about other
No,
parts
no.
of
The thing
India?
is, no. But the thing is, when this is what I'm saying. I've said it before. If I'm looking at it objectively, with India. So I don't agree with this. I'm looking at it objectively. If India gives Punjab a referendum, then Gujarat would want a referendum. Then Kashmir would want a referendum. Then the whole of India is going to collapse.
We're not going to give you a referendum.
I understand. So what I'm saying, I am a realist in the sense that I understand that getting the referendum is probably going to be very, very, very difficult or non-existent. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for it.
But the way things are going, for your information, I can predict that in the future or near future, the way these people, this political party, these extremist guys, and
BJP.
they're not very high-minded.
Down to the BJP.
Yeah,
RSS
and
should say
similarly,
no.
other countries, well, even in Pakistan as well, they're sort of narrow-minded. You know,
Yeah,
they're
extremists,
edging for war,
Yeah.
both countries. The whole plan is to divide India, you know, like Yugoslavia,
Yeah.
into states as well as Pakistan as well.
But I always
They
wanted
wanna
that
break
anyway.
it. Well,
India was
that's not a good idea.
No, but the thing is, India as a concept was never really there until the British come.
No, that's
India
not
is
true.
huge. I mean,
That's not true.
someone from
Bharat was
South
there before
India
India.
and someone from the Punjab or
Bharat was
Kashmir.
there before India.
Well,
Bharat, India was there before.
well, yeah, what I'm saying, the concept of what you know is India today.
The modern India is
The
after,
modern India,
yeah.
that's a new concept. There was always an India, and I'm proud to be Indian in terms of my heritage. We got a great history, but that doesn't mean I'm proud to be Indian in terms of the Indian government that we have, including the BJP, who are fascist, and the Congress Party are no better anyway. So it's very corrupt. When I'm criticizing India, I'm talking about the government,
The people are-
not the people
Yes,
or the
yes,
country.
yes.
So
I
people
agree
get
with
this
you.
kind of misunderstood because I call a lot of countries third worlds. Like I call India a
But can I
third
give you
world.
the side from the other side?
But I
Let's-
don't mean the way it looks. I'm talking about the way it's governed.
Yes.
And
yes.
India is.
It's because extremist people and all those countries, subcontinents.
And I'll be honest with you, this is
Pakistan,
really
India,
sad to
Pakistan.
say this,
India,
but Pakistan is actually behaving more
I can
civilly
name both of them, they're
than
from-
India. And that's a disgrace when you consider that India is supposed to be the biggest democracy
One thing,
in the world.
Raindrop said that
they both
in India they didn't recognize Sikhs as Hindus until 2012. That changed.
Oh, have they changed it? All right, big up to Raindrop anyway. Thank you for that anyway.
They-
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, constructive advice.
So it's same going with Kashmir. And you know, it's flush, but it never gets solved. It will never get solved. It's just they are selling arms for Western countries to keep the Kashmir.
But don't you think that having a referendum will finally put it to rest?
No, Raj, by
Because
Can
I say something? I know for I know for a fact.
They won't
I know from my understanding. I've been in India for maybe like 30 years, but from everyone I've talked to who have been in India, they would not want, from my understanding on the ground, they don't want a separate state. So I reckon the referendum
They
would
can have
probably.
some semi-independence.
Yeah, but yeah, more autonomy. So you'll have it more like the way the UK is structured, where you have Scotland with its own government. I mean, there is its own government within the Punjab, but there is a lot of problems in terms of being able to control its own kind of borders and
Can I
stuff
give
like
you the
that.
position as a nationalist who loves the Sikh people and the Punjabi people?
And
I'm
Brown
an-
Hitler.
I'm an internationalist. We're not going to give Punjab away, but what is wrong and what is right for the Sikhs is not just devolution. There's a history of injustice from Amritsar, from everything against the Sikh people. There's a legitimate history from just the Indian government, forget the colonial part. So the Punjabi Sikh people have rights and grievances, but what we should do is we're not breaking up the national power of India, and Punjabis are sensible, we want to be part of that. What we need to do is, like you're saying, is a devolution referendum, where it becomes like Wales or Scotland, with your parliament for your local affairs, Sikh boys running police, Sikh boys running administration, Sikh boys running education, only in Punjab. But no international, you'd be like any other state for defense, for foreign policy, right? And I think that would diffuse the tensions.
Yes,
and get the Sikh people to feel good again.
independent for
That's not
generations.
Khalistan.
But the thing is, like, you know, I look, when it comes to this Khalistan, it's more emotional than
It is.
It's more emotional than
Like
logical.
Palestine, like Palestine.
It's more emotional than logical. When I think about it logically, I'm like, it's never going to happen. But from an emotional standpoint, I want it to happen because
Because of the
I feel
grievances.
aggrieved by the way the Indian government. Because I remember when I was 9 years old, watching the
Like
videos as they were coming on the screen of Sikhs being massacred. And them
was
seeing-
bad, it
so
was bad.
so when you're looking at this and no one's really been brought to justice, you're going to start to criticize the government that is trying to govern your people.
And the people. That
And the
present
people
them.
as well, yeah. But there was a lot of people that did
Joe,
help.
Khalistan boys came today, and I watched them do the bus and everything, and they looked at me, some smiled, immediately checked me out because I'm not Sikh.
Yeah.
But I could see the Khalistan pride.
Maybe they know
Because
you're the
they're-
brown Hitler.
Well, that hat doesn't help.
But I looked at them,
Yeah, dude.
but I looked at them, and I saw the Khalistan pride. But I saw
Oh, look at this. Come here and talk about
He's
India.
not even Indian. He's Hindi.
He doesn't even know a single thing about India.
World language. He's
This is
lost.
this is the biggest. This is the
Indian-
most.
Indian
This is
people
the most
laugh at him.
famous Indian. This is the most famous
Indian
Indian in the
people laugh
world,
at him.
but he knows nothing about India. Think about
People
the,
laugh at him.
He's
all
the
he,
whitest Indian
all he
boy
knows
ever.
is samosa and pakore. That's it.
I've got it, but yeah.
Samosa.
He doesn't even know what I'm saying. Right? I could have said.
How is all right? So this is the
But
difference.
Raj is legitimate. So I think if the Sikh people had control of the police, control of the education, control of that, and non-pro Sikh people were removed, like devolution in Scotland, I think over time, a generation or two, the Sikh
Zionism as
people-
well. They are pro-Zionism.
I think.
No breakaway. India, we will not let Punjab
I
go.
mean, no, the Sikhs.
But the one thing I don't like, and I'm going to say this on camera, I don't like the way.
Which case,
I'm going to say the way Pakistan or Pakistanis use India, kind of the Sikhs' grievance,
they wanna split
to
them.
kind of score points against India. I can't stand that shit. It's not going to work with me. Don't come up to me, okay, Dabadi, oh, we agree with Khalistan. No, you don't agree with
don't,
Khalistan.
they don't.
You want to
Anti-India.
destroy India. If I had a choice between India and Pakistan, I'll be with India.
And if you picked India, we'd give you Khalistan if you
Yeah,
invaded
and
the
they-
Punjab. If you invaded
So,
Pakistan.
but what people don't
Take some
realise
land
that
back.
the Punjab here is on the border and it's split in half between Pakistan. Imagine like Northern Ireland.
This
And so-
doesn't concern you.
So basically, you have them, and so we're on the border. And if they were ever going to invade, India, there's only one place to come through, which is where the Punjab is, which is where Alexander the Great went through.
The 5 Rivers, man.
You got beaten though. You got beaten. Though. Big up King Boris. Big up King Boris, the ultimate Punjabi. Yeah. So we pushed him back. So everybody has to go through that. And so there is this kind of
Never cross the
there is
Punjabi boys,
there is this kind of manipulation that I see that I don't like, where you're having like, let's say, so-called pro-Khalistanis who are from Pakistan, who truly don't give a shit about Khalistan or the Sikh people. It's not like something out of Game of Thrones.
Dust storm. Winter is coming.
Yeah, winter. Oh, what, let's not talk about Game of Thrones.
But see,
Yeah,
that's a great position because I think a lot of Indians would support that position. They wouldn't support Khalistan. So a referendum
mean-
for Khalistan will never win. A referendum for devolution will have huge support in India.
Yeah, I think the problem is,
difference.
and the thing is, the more prosperous I think India gets, the less they'll probably want to
You want
separate.
to go to Pakistan, which side would you choose economically?
Oh
You choose
God,
India,
I
man.
go India, man. Pakistan's a basket case. It's going to go bankrupt in the next, God knows what. It owes,
If shit goes wrong, that's a place that gets fucked over, not India.
yeah, so yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I think I don't want to kind of derail it too much and go too off topic, but hopefully people have got a bit more of an understanding. If I have now, the problem is this: I don't have fellow Sikhs to converse with, so it's hard for me to get a conversation going with myself. Although I can do it. But I'll have to keep it switching sides as I'm doing it. Yeah? So if any Sikhs want to come down, I don't talk about theology or anything to do with like religion too much. But I do want to talk about Khalistan and the kind of and the politics of
I'd love to debate
Punjab.
some hardcore Khalistani boys. That would be
Come down, Khalistanis,
Come
man.
down earlier on.
Yeah, I saw them all going, hey, and I was thinking, yeah, Indian intelligence should be monitoring you fuckers.
Hey!
And Indian
Big up to
security
my
intelligence,
Khalistan brothers,
you should
man.
be on the fucking special branch of this, you boys. But I feel for you because I think the Sikhs were done with it badly. They were
All right,
done
so
with it badly.
the thing is, it's even worse because the Sikhs have contributed, considering their small population, the Punjabis.
High contribution.
I'm going to say the word Punjabis because saying the word Sikh is more than just Punjab than Sikhs. So when you look at Punjab as a little place within India, it has contributed so much towards India.
Hardworking, economic growth, culturally.
But
everything.
it's been abused the most by India as well.
Both sides.
Yes, because of
By the Islamists and by the Hindus,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
not
yeah.
like the Sikhs.
yeah. Obviously, I mean the Sikhs
So
also.
devolving would work well.
Well, the
Make
Sikhs
stick.
actually got the bad end of the stick when it comes to actually the separation and partition as well.
But I think
Because
if
the
you let
Indian government
Indians
promised
run it,
more.
Let the Sikhs run the council, the education, the health system, right? Everything except the international.
All right. So that's it. Did you want to discuss anything else?
I don't know. I just came to say what was happening. I thought it might
Because
be
I'm not sure when I'm going to come back.
Why, you never coming back here?
I'm coming back, but I don't know from week to week now. Before I had everything scheduled in for like a year.
No, man, I haven't seen you around. No.
It's like every year. And this time I'm
See how
doing,
the rich and powerful fly.
I'm doing it by week by week. I'll see the day before whether I can come back. So have you got any topic you want to talk about?
No, I'm good, man. I don't know, unless you have one. I just came to say hello.
Talk about Trump.
How about
Let's
Trump?
go. Let's
How
give him a
about
minute.
Trump.
Let's give him a
I'm an Indian hobbit. Come on. Come on. Don't be a pissy. He's the only Indian guy who doesn't have any balls. Jump in. Huh?